Hi, I'm Paul Moehring, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all. It's time once again for another ResultsLeader.fm. Welcome back. Glad you're here. And as always, I have a treat for your ears. I've got another amazing guest today, Mr. Paul Moehring. He is a coach, a speaker, an author, and an all-around good guy. Let's jump in with Paul. All right, Paul, welcome to the show, brother. Are you ready to rock this thing?
Absolutely.
All right, let's give our listeners a quick win. What book have you given most as a gift?
Well, I must admit that I've given my book most as a gift just because I want as many copies out there as possible. So that's my book, Get Squared.
Get Squared, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Excellent. I'm with you, brother. I give my book out more than anything else, so I know exactly where you're coming from. So tell me a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
That is a great question. And I'd have to go back a ways there. Going back to high school, I'm gonna hit that one first. When I was a junior in high school, I was a wrestler, and I dislocated a knee and really blew it up badly, and I wasn't allowed to wrestle anymore. That year, I was 8-1 before it happened. I was looking to get to state, and just it could have made a difference in the school that I chose. But after going through that process, the next year I became a diver. So I was a senior as a first-time diver and made it to the conference tournament and did pretty well. And it just told me, all right, you can take something bad and make it good. You can take lemons and make lemonade.
Excellent, man. So what would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you have ever made?
Everything that I would say is the most worthwhile investment has been in myself, developing my knowledge, developing my skill set, learning, continually learning. I don't care. I'm not going to be going back to formal school, but I don't care how many doctorates I had. I'd keep learning because it keeps you fresh and keeps you on the cutting edge and keeps you alive.
Now, what would you say to those people who maybe spend a little too much time learning?
Well, we all remember those folks that we knew from our hometown, maybe that were in college at age 33 working on their fourth major. There is an overdone portion to it. So I'm constantly developing myself even today, but I block out time for it. In other words, I focus on my RPAs first, my revenue producing activities. Those are the most important. So those are what I focus on. And then I carve out some time to learn during the day. But the majority of your time has got to be spent moving your business forward for sure.
And and I thought this was interesting. It came up in the pre-interview that you actually had to limit yourself on the personal development because you love to do it. And so how have you limited yourself? Like what kind of time do you give yourself? Is it daily? Is it a weekly time limit? What do you give yourself?
I give myself an hour a day.
An hour a day.
An hour a day. And I was up to a point where I was probably grabbing 3 or 4 hours a day.
Wow.
And so there are times when, you're learning something new and you need that push, but there's other times when it's knowing when to stop, so to speak. And one of the problems that a lot of us will have in just looking at ourselves is we get that imposter syndrome going and saying, am I good enough? Do I know enough? And of course you are, and you do. You just have to take it and put it to work.
In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
My morning routine, for sure. I'd read so many books on morning routines. And when I am plugged into my morning routine, the rest of my day is way more productive. I feel better and my outlook on the world is better.
Now, you opened up the can of worms. When people hear that, they're like, well, what is your morning routine? Do you mind sharing with us?
No, not a bit. So I start out my morning and I get my exercise in. Usually I'm going to a class or I'm meeting some people to mountain bike ride, or in some instances, I'm just going out for a jog or going to the gym to lift on my own. So usually that's the first thing because I get out of bed and I'm on a schedule to get to where I'm meeting people. And then immediately after that, I will I'll take the next 15 minutes and listen to Bible verses or just do some general prayer and just kind of getting myself in that zone, taking care of the spiritual portion of my life and getting that in check. And then I'll have something for breakfast and grab a cup of coffee and shoot off for my day.
Love it. What would you say are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
Bad recommendations. I think that everybody wants to sell you something in the space, and you've got to be careful about who's selling it to you. Do they have your best interests at heart? And if they don't, then you've got to get out of that as soon as possible. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are selling different programs and things, and they're not doing enough time, maybe fact finding or getting to know their client so that they can make sure it matches up to what is going to help that client ultimately long term.
How do you figure that out? How do you know if that person that you're buying from has your best interest at heart?
Well, it's a pretty quick process, as you know. You've got to make those decisions pretty quickly. You do have to trust your gut to some extent, and then you back up your gut with facts. And I've just been a big question person. I love to ask questions. I love to get answers and then dovetail off of that, kind of like what you do in your podcasting. You get to know somebody by asking questions and then listening interactively, remembering that you've got two ears and one mouth so that you listen twice as much as you talk.
What kind of questions are you asking?
How long have you been doing business? What are the greatest breakthroughs that you've seen? Who can I talk to? 4 or 5 people deep that have used your services that wouldn't mind giving you a reference. I think those questions are really helpful. And then when I get those references, I mean, I will actually call references and people that have used the product and really get their insight on them.
Doing your due diligence, eh?
For sure.
All right, I know you were getting into that, and we were just about to get into my favorite part where we talk about results. But first, I want to ask you a question. Are you picking up what we're laying down on this show? Are you digging what we are sharing? If you are, why not make yourself a hero today and share this with somebody who can use it? Put this out on your social media channels. #ResultsLeaderFM. I'll be out there looking for you, and I'll make sure to boost it up too when I see you. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump back into the interview. Let's talk about results. I mean, the name of the show is Results Leader after all. So why do results matter?
Results are the only reason why anybody gets a coach at any time. And I always look at life in a weird sort of a telescope, so to speak. I think sports are life in fast motion. So I'm going to take you to the golf course because that's my favorite sport. And if I'm on the golf course and I am slicing it into the houses and I am just having a miserable time during the round, I'll say to myself, why do I even play this game? It's just horrible. I'm out here suffering. I'm losing to my buddies. I'm putting balls in backyards. And then all of a sudden, maybe the 16th or 17th hole, I hit a great shot. It's close to the pin and I'm on top of the world again. But if I'm hitting the ball that badly, I've got to go get a coach and get some help. I've got to go have somebody else look at it with their set of eyes and get some help. Well, if I get to that coach and that coach says, hey, listen, I got some good advice for you here. You need to take it immediately. You should give up the game and never play again. That's not going to be really helpful. Now, I suppose there could be a time when that's the case, but it would have to look like Charles Barkley when he was going through his major swing flaws and he had that big twitch in his swing. I would think to myself, maybe it would be time to give it up then. But coaching really just expands the performance. You have to be ready and you have to be willing and you have to put in the time and effort, because when you go to a swing coach, there's usually some things that you have to change. And they're not going to strip your swing down and start from scratch, but they're going to implement some things that may feel uncomfortable for a while. And the only way to get comfortable with them is to do it. The only way to get the result is to do it. And that's the same thing that I found with coaching.
That is definitely a keeper. The only way to get the result is to do it. Make a note, team. That quote must be highlighted. Dig it, man. So, in the last 5 years, what new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
I've always been a humble person and a humble leader. I always like to think of the servant leadership portion. So I don't take a lot of time to stop, even though I've gotten plenty of awards in my career and trips and all these other things. I don't take the time to stop and say, hey, you really do have some things that you can bring to people. It's not about being arrogant, it's about helping others. And so the realization that, wow, I've really got a lot of tools that, I mean, over the 27, 28-year career that I had prior to this, I've really got a lot of tools that I can use. And when I sit down and explain one of these tools, people look at me like, oh my goodness, this is rocket science. This is unbelievable. How did you ever come up with this? And I'm like, I guess we've just been doing it that way. So that was a big realization, just knowing that you've got enough to help people. Get out and help.
Paul, what area of your business would you like better results?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question, because this year I've got some massive goals, and there was a book out there prior, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, that talked about the BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. And I've got some huge goals out there. I've got to figure out how to get my groups started alongside of my one-on-one training, and that's going to be my next step. And as soon as I grasp a hold of that and get that implemented and running at full speed, then I really feel like the year can come together. But until I've got that all figured out, and I'm probably 2/3 of the way there, until I've got it all figured out, that's the challenge right now.
Now, some people, and I've run into this many times, they don't think that they get as much value out of groups. What would you say? Because you're trying to get into groups rather than one on one.
Yeah, and the one-on-one schedule isn't quite full either. So I can still take some more one-on-ones, and it is a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But what I do find with the groups is that I'm not the only set of eyes on their business now. And the neat thing is that when you get a group of people together, it kind of takes on that mastermind formula, where you get a group of masterminds together and there's another brain surge that occurs, or another brain that's formed that brings new ideas into the scope. So if you can get people that play well in the sandbox with each other and can work off of each other, it can work really well.
I'm gonna challenge you here,
Mhm.
and I am with you. I am a part of masterminds. I always have one or two going each year, and most people I know think I'm nuts. Like what is it about masterminds that is so beneficial?
I'm really not sure. I think it was written about extensively in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's book, where he talked about masterminds. And I'm not sure, but I was always in masterminds in my other business. And I found that my best ideas came from other people in that group. Now, let's face it, there were some duds too. There were some people that didn't contribute. But if you've got 10, 12 people in that mastermind group, you're going to get some great ideas. And I think what inspired me to write a book was a guy in my mastermind group that had written a book. And he was just a normal guy like me. His name is Jeff Hastings. And he wrote a book. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you can write a book, why can't I write a book? And it just took me a while to get there, but I got it done. And it really, really felt good to do so.
How do you go about picking a good mastermind?
Well, in my opinion, you can't just talk to the leader or the organizer. You've got to get a couple people deep into the mix. And if you need even 5 people deep into the mix, it really, for me, is making sure that I'm not going to walk into the room and feel that, ugh, And let's say, I'm going to use a silly example, another sports example. Let's say that I walk into the room and it's all Green Bay Packers fans. And I happen to be a Minnesota Viking fan and a Cardinal fan. I've been here long enough. But if they're all Green Bay Packer fans and all they can do is spew how great Green Bay is, and it makes my skin crawl, I'm in the wrong group. So sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 people in and you're like, yeah, I just don't think so. I went to a networking group at one time and the guy pulled me aside and said, hey, let's go grab a lunch and let's talk. And he was spewing his ideas at me at lunch. And I thought, no, this just isn't going to work for me if this is the predominant thought process going on here. Because you don't want to waste your time, obviously.
What results are you most proud of?
I went into a coaching client's office and introduced him to the goal square, which is in the book that I had mentioned earlier. He worked with his wife in the business and then a couple of other employees. If you were to look at a graph of his business, it was on a sledding hill down. Okay. So it wasn't dropping off like a cliff, but it was headed down. And I thought to myself, if we could just stabilize the down, I'd be happy. I think he'd be happy. His wife would be happy if we could just stabilize that. But instead of stabilizing the down, we got him to grow like 20 to 25%. And I was actually surprised at the result. And of course, I didn't do any of it. It was just his mind frame, his support, his team, what he had them doing. Things just were going in the right direction. And he felt so good. It's really neat because I would think back when I would train new people to get into business for themselves. I would tell them, my greatest joy is going to come when you get producer or business owner of the year. And you're on the stage and you're thanking your spouse, you're thanking your staff people, you're thanking your kids for their support. And then the music starts to pipe up a little bit, which means it's time to get off the stage. And as you're walking off the stage, you run back to the mic and you say, and I'd also like to thank Paul Moehring. That's all I want you to do as the last thought that you had. And that drives me, that just really fuels my passion. So I find that to be a really big part for me.
Any parting thoughts you want to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now, Paul?
The only thing that I'll share is that if you resonate with some of the things that I've said and you'd like to jump on a call, I'll spend usually a half hour, 45 minutes with somebody on the phone. And if I can't predict to 95% that we can make a substantial difference in their business, then I will not suggest that we work together. But in the meantime, I promised myself that in that half hour, 45 minutes, they're going to get something that they can take back with them to their business and put it into play. Even without hiring my services, they're going to have something they can take back. Because I learn from every single one of those phone calls.
Now, I got to ask, and I know everybody else is wondering, where can we get more from you, Paul?
Well, it's difficult to spell, but the best place is to go to my website, which is spaulmoehring.com. And I'm sure you've got the availability to put it in show notes, but that's the best way to go. My phone number, I'll even give you that, 602-647-1492.
This is a real businessman. He uses the phone. Respect, brother. I love the phone too. And you are absolutely correct. We will be sharing links to everything in the show notes. We've been speaking with Paul Moehring. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. Thank you for spending some time with us. And results leaders, thank you for tuning in. Another one is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.